Howdy, Cape Codders. Welcome to the Scannell Agenda. This is show number 2. Today's date is Friday, August 23rd, 2013. And we are, as usual, at the Cape Cod Community Media Center, which used to be Channel 17, but now it's Channel 99 here on the Cape. And that is located here on 17 Shad Hole Road in Dennisport, Massachusetts. So thank you again very much to the Cape Cod Community Media Center. It's just a great facility. Can't say enough about it. I'd like to first thank Howie Carr. I was on his show. I called in, got right through, and just like to thank Howie Carr for the work he's been doing in the area of the the corruption with the with all that corruption, the Winter Hill Gang, and all that stuff. And also he's gotten into the welfare system, which I'm going to speak about today, my town nurse-based or town nurse boss system. It's a redesign of our social services. So thanks to Howie Carr. And I'd also like to mention too, before I really get going, today's newspaper, Senator Wolf was in the newspaper today again with this kind of fictitious issue. It's really not an issue to my mind, but it is causing a lot of problems for Senator Wolf. And I really don't think it's right that he has to suffer with this business, because I really see it as a non-issue that's being blown up all out of proportion, ostensibly, I would say, by the establishment. Dare I say the establishment, because, I mean, that sounds a little paranoid, but this guy's a good guy. Senator Wolf's a good guy, and he's a real solid political thinker, even though he's mostly a businessman. His political thinking, I think, is very good. And we need someone like him to be a governor, or hopefully maybe there's someone better that's in my party, the Republican Party, that can step forward and run against him. I'd love to run against him because I know he'd engage on issues like fisheries management that I'm into. I know he would engage as a businessman working for the people on these issues of social services that need reform. Senator Wolf really sees things as business, because he's business-minded and he's got that knack for taking care of his crew, because he's got an employee-owned company that he has been a real steady hand at the wheel for many, many years. Nice guy, family guy, but totally a solid guy. So it really disturbs me that this non-issue about some fictional ethics violation that doesn't really exist is getting so much play in the newspapers. It's just ridiculous. We need good people in politics. So, we need people like Senator Wolf and myself, who aren't really party hack type people, we need to stick up for each other. So Senator Wolf, please stick up for me. I'll stick up for you. And we have to realize in this country now, we have an oppressive oligarchy. And that includes the newspapers. And when they call out the ballyhoo boys, they can really ruin somebody. I think that's the intent here. I think he's being ruined for no damn good reason, and it really is bugging me. Because I really do think this guy's got a strong moral backbone, and he's a real businessman. He's a real practical guy. But maybe he doesn't line up for the establishment the way the oligarchy or the establishment wants him to line up. And if you think I'm being paranoid, I don't think so. I think people get knocked out all the time, knocked out of politics. And I just don't think it's right. I really think we need to start something like a 101% employee-owned media company, because we need media to really tell the truth and not be anybody's kingmaker and, installing people in and that kind of thing. All right, enough of that blabbering and blubbering about politics. I really want to talk about this town nurse-based system. And you remember last week I left the show, and and I said, you know, I'm really into social services systems redesign. And I really am. I'm really into it since, well, I figured when I joined Bay Bridge, and I never in my life thought I'd be joining some program like that, but I thought it would be safest thing to do since, you know, since getting out of Taunton State Hospital in the year 2000, after being put in there in 1999, I had all these diagnoses that I didn't agree with and didn't like. And believe me, if you were diagnosed with homicidal and delusional disorder and delusions of grandeur, delusions of a jealous nature, I mean, they did that, delusions of a jealous nature, before they took my DNA. It's a lot of corruption, so if Senator Wolf wants to stick up for me and get into that, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea. No one should have to suffer in politics and work for some kind of an unholy alliance in politics. You know, and I won't do it. I just won't do it. So the town nurse-based system is really what I have to explain today. But it has to be put in context of what a rotten, corrupt system we have now in the social services. It's so corrupt. I really think we need a different base, and that's why I call it town nurse-based system. Or I could also call it town nurse boss, and I could also call it town nurse board. So any one of those three, town nurse board, town nurse based. As the base is, I guess, a mathematical way of looking at it. It's a town nurse based system. It's like a mathematical system. That's the base of the system, these town nurses. Now the last thing a town nurse is, and I can tell you this for sure, these nurses are not political people. My mother, I only saw her speak once on the town meeting floor to save her town nurse office in Harwich. Now that was many years ago. I was a teenager. This was before I was a voter, and Dad helped her out. But Harwich voted to keep the town nurse office in Harwich, and I was pretty proud of my mom. And then later on, the town of Harwich did elect to use the VNA. But I really believe in local systems insofar as they are pretty darned efficient, because the local people tend to be on top of the details, on top of the people, and this can be a fault too of any system. You know, you can actually be too much on top of it. So now in designing a town nurse-based system, you have to realize that you're designing a political system around non-political people and around what is essentially a non-political job or an entity. In other words, people helping people. That's usually not what we consider politics. Years and years ago, there used to be almshouses or poorhouses. Now, we don't want to go back to those days. I'm not suggesting that. That was more local control. Some of that was state-mandated local poorhouses that all the towns had. Certainly we don't want to go back exactly to those days, but there's some of that historical stuff that was pretty good. These systems weren't fat with everybody that, you know, wanted to get in on free money. And certainly in those days, you know, and I go back to the Howie Carr show again, I don't think his distinctions of welfare were very admirable, because there are some strong and separate distinctions in the disability community and the welfare community, and those have to be kind of laid out on the table first of all. So years ago we did not have the single parenthood subsidies that we have now, and as a matter of fact, I used to call myself a real conservative in that, you know, an old fisherman, Harry Hunt, explained it to me this way, and he was a great fisherman, a real smart guy. He was pretty blunt, and you know, I was a teenager and I hung out down at the waterfront, and he explained to me that if a woman, and he didn't use a woman, he used another word, very insulting word. If a woman had a baby and didn't have a husband, and she couldn't afford the baby, that the baby should be taken away. And I kind of thought that made sense, because I could see, even back then when I was a teenager, that this kind of thing was just going to get out of hand. If you offer free money to people in lieu of, you know, get a husband and have a family, if you want to be the government and do that, this is just going to get out of hand. I could see that when I was a kid, that this would get out of hand. And now I guess there are some communities where the percentages of single mothers on welfare, single parents, however you want to put it, single motherhood families on welfare, it's, I don't know if it's ruining our society, but it's not helping. And I always thought that was basically reverse eugenics. You know, in the 40s, they'd talk about eugenics and genetically engineering society, and this seems to be doing the job in the reverse way, if you want to look at it factually, because I think the welfare setup now is that if you do get a mate and produce a child, if the mate can be attached for the paycheck, that's not going to work out for the mate with no, you know, husband rights and no family rights, just the sire of a child. But anyway, I think Howie was talking about that mostly. But first of all, I don't believe in, you know, that kind of subsidy. And I think that was basically the perfect storm of your lunatic fringe on the left lining up perfectly with the lunatic fringe on the right, and that was the right-wing people were trying to prevent abortion. And this was way back when I was a teenager, this was all going on. And your left-wing people were, well, this is a program, you know, a social welfare program, so it's got to be good. You know, the government is big and the government's going to help out. So I think we need to do away with that. And when we talk about welfare, I think we should be talking about people with disabilities. That's pretty important to me, and to most people, especially people on the conservative side on the social issues like the Republicans. So thank you very much, Howie Carr. You know, he represents a lot of frustrated Republicans like myself. He doesn't have it figured out, but with this town nurse-based system, we can have a board of locally elected and qualified town nurses. And now when I say town nurses, you could be a doctor, possibly you could be a director of a clubhouse. What that would give us would be a pre-qualified person running for either, let's say, a fire or a water district, or working in some capacity as a regional town nurse board with 3 or 4 or 5 small towns that would run your social services. And they would absorb all kinds of people, all these state people, and it's massive, huge load. Disabled people are carrying a huge load right now of bureaucrats. And so the money that the taxpayer intends to be used to support people with mental illness, ostensibly such as myself, but I don't claim mental illness. I claim it's just political corruption. But setting that aside, these systems that we use now are monuments to government workers, is what they are. There's more government workers. I mean, it could choke a horse. There's so many government workers, and we're talking about people helping people. So the town nurse-based, town nurse board, town nurse boss system is local people having more of a handle. Now there would be an oversight committee with the town nurse board so that you wouldn't be able to choke the town nurses off trying to do their job in social services. You know, there'd be kind of an oversight board, a larger board of 25 people or so. And the town nurse board would be a 7-man board. And then you would have the things, everything would plug into that pricing core. And I'm going to call the voters, in this case, the pricing core, because all my system designs have this foundation, and the foundation for the town nurse board is simply that local controls have to come back with the social services, disability care, anything involving people helping people. We have so many agencies now that are just gumming up everything and sucking up every penny they can, and very little is getting through to the actual disabled people. You've got mountains of people. You've got hordes of people that are in middle management. So what the town nurse board would do, the money would funnel through federal, state money, that'd federal through the town nurse board system. And so that's about it. I mean, I've got this big file, and nothing I can say right now is going to give you confidence. It's just something I'm working on. I think this is a winner, but it's not like I can say, boy, I guarantee you this is a great system, because I can't say that. This system has not been vetted. It's just something I have on my drawing board. I think genetically I have the right stuff to design this system, in that my father was a planner and my mother was a town nurse, and I've been in these social services now for about 13 years. So I've got the experience, unlike Howie Carr. He has not been in the system, I have. We probably have a lot, Howie and I probably have a lot of shared philosophy, but I don't think he could design a system, and I think I could. All right, so I can't say this is a great system, because it's just gelling. But I've been working on it for many years, and I could say that it's just gelling. The market quota system of fishery management, I can guarantee you that's the best system you will ever implement, if you do implement it. And I say that because it's been so well vetted on fish folk with so many qualified people that have critiqued it. Whereas this system, I live in a world of Bay Bridge Clubhouse, and I have a certain amount of expertise in that, and with our standards, they're called clubhouse standards, but our program is being really dismantled, and it really is a program where peer-to-peer supports are big, and so that's a system I would want to copy with the town nurse-based system. I think it harkens back to the old days with the old poorhouses. Your peer-to-peer, of course they didn't call it back then, was big. Your people in the poorhouse would be helping each other, and the different disabilities pitching in with each other. So that's one of the big things about Clubhouse, is that it's big on peer-to-peer. And so I'm designing that in. That's huge. These town nurse-based systems are local people helping people. I mean, church people, volunteers. None of that relates to these huge monster bureaucracies we have now. So I'm busy working on that. All right, so much for that. Now I have another system, and sometimes these systems kind of overlap and dovetail. Now, a recycle system would be very, very much involved with people helping people, because, in the old days, all right, what was the job of these poorhouses? It was like work on the farm. But, I mean, a certain amount of that would be really good to get back into with organic farming. And with the healthy soil and food system that I'm working on now, those kind of systems dovetail with local people helping people systems that specifically I call TNB, a town nurse-based system. You can call it whatever you want. I call it a town nurse system, but it's local control. But nowadays, recycling, if we had a good recycle system, that could work locally, that your people helping people could really put a lot of people to work using a recycle system. Now, as I mentioned on the last program, the gist of the recycle system is that you've got a tax on materials at the point of manufacture. And of course that means at the point of import. So this could be seen as a budding international system, because any kind of product that you're going to have a premium on the materials based on the quality of their recyclability. Anytime you do that, well, that is going to work internationally, because markets for plastics, paper, glass, these are all basically international markets. Aluminum, scrap aluminum, steel, and all that stuff is based on market rates for materials. So the gist of the recycling system is, boy, we're almost there. We're this far away, according to a lot of the people that haul trash, we're this far away from being in the black ink versus red ink, when it comes to these local rubbish haulers and recyclers, etc., being profitable on a market level with collecting the newspapers and glass, plastics, metal recycling, all this stuff. We're almost there. So if we can tax at the point of manufacture and use that same money, that same dollar, to subsidize the collection prices, then what you're doing is you're buying a more valuable product at the cash register when you go to pick up your six-pack of beer or soda or any product, really. You're buying more value into that product that you can then pick up, or that your social services people, more likely, will pick up. So you'd be paying a recycle tax, but actually you'd have people that would be getting rate pay. Here's one. I've got my file open here, and this says rate pay recycle counters, and it's got details of how to, and here are the people on a line, and they're sorting things out. How are they going to get paid? Oh, there's a lot of detail with recycling. Diapers, for instance. I've got things like subsidy for organic diapers. And this would include pads at the nursing home, that kind of thing. These are all bad products to recycle right now, because you're trying to recycle human hazardous waste, bioproduct waste with plastics, and you got to landfill them or incinerate them. However, you use a recycle system that incentivizes a diaper that's organic based. These technologies will improve. I mean, they're there right now, but they're not really there, if you know what I mean. But if you get the market behind a recycled diaper, you're going to see some things happen, because there's money behind a recycled diaper. Therefore, people are going to produce a recyclable, compostable, diaper or pad. So a recycle system has to encourage the whole waste stream, so-called waste stream, to be reused, recycled, that kind of thing. So starting at the point of manufacture, that's what we want to do. And there's, what's this, student incentives, students, kids, incentives with the recycle system for social services to get involved. And, you don't want to see people out of work. And it's funny, but people in my neighborhood up in Hyannis, they like to get the cans and recycle. Simple jobs for simple people. Perfect. That's where it's at. Then you can get into detail. Here's one for Tide, the Procter & Gamble, reuse a particular container, and you can get pretty specific with recycling a very high quality container. Disposal penalty to recycle incentive materials market, town or individual fees, and This is kind of what I doodle on. These are possible components of a larger system. This is probably about an inch thick of a file. This goes back to when I was on Nantucket. This is an sometimes I get some really old stuff. This is when I first started my project files, I think. I didn't know I was working on complex systems, but I was told that later on. So working on this recycle system goes back to when I was, I had this whole setup down the basement. It was terrible. I mean, just a waste of time. So something that the town nurse-based system can use is good ways to put poor and disabled to work. And we need that recycle system to be ironed out. And we need the things like the Presidential Scallop Hotel to be ironed out. That was a world-class industrial aquaculture, public aquaculture. These all represent, the work I do represents a lot of jobs for people, but they're not make-work jobs. These are real wealth-creating scenarios. So the town nurse-based system can run your clubhouses. Your local people can basically run your clubhouses in what I call a job and a bunk. And there's so many people that don't belong in a clubhouse. And they don't, as Carr was saying, they're front-end loading all these, ex-welfare people into these social services based on disability. It's just wrong. He knows it's wrong, but he doesn't have a redesign. Howie, I do. So let's work together. Get me on your show as a guest, and we'll hash over this stuff. So a job and a bunk would be just that. You get a job and a bunk. You don't get much more than that. But, if you're not disabled, then that's great. So I mentioned in the last show I have 3 or 4 feet of these just doodling and, working on these projects. I measured it, and it's 4 feet 6 inches. And I would like to get that published. So I could use some help in publishing and writing this stuff up, doing more presentations. I'm kind of scatterbrained, so I really could use some help. But there's a germ of some good stuff here. I've got a ribbon prison system for the border in Mexico. That's a good project. But just things like how to explain the lunatic fringe to people and why we get these fishery systems that are all cockeyed. When the lunatic fringe agrees, like with the single-parent subsidies, the left wing and the right wing agree for some reason. Same with fisheries. You've got to really watch that stuff. When your lunatic fringes line up, you're going to have trouble. So that's the show for today. I want to talk about systems. I want some people from Woods Hole or anywhere else, some people with aquaculture backgrounds, to critique that Presidential Scallop Hotel, critique the tripe system, critique the market quota system. And if I get my stuff together, I'll ask for critique of the town nurse-based system and some of the recycle systems, the job and the bunk system, and some other systems. I've got the ribbon prison system, but I won't ask for people to critique it if I don't have it published. But so that's about it, folks. Let's talk about systems design, systems construction. So that's the Scannell agenda. Thank you, Cape Codders.